You're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup with me, Roisin the Chleirigh.
And me, Paul Brophy.
The Irish Political Roundup's County Councillors Caucus Roundtable. And joining us this week is Fine Gael County Councillor Gerry Coyle from Mayo and Councillor Frank McBrearty from Donegal County Council, and returning back with us with the panel is Councillor Michael Sheenan from New Ross in County Wexford. And we have to give back our credit to where credit's due to Councillor Michael Sheenan, who came up with the name, the County Councillors Caucus. So we're back on our second week of this roundtable caucus, and it's what is happening in your local areas. What are you bringing up in the County Council? Are there any press or media pieces you'd like to share or talk about? So we'll get stuck into it. Michael, will it bring you back in first this week? Michael, what have you been up to in the County Council chamber, or what is happening in your area?
Well, thanks for the invite, and good evening to everyone. It's great to be back for the third time. And yes, I'm claiming credit for the Councillors Caucus. So, you know, politicians, they claim credit for everything except asylum this weather. So we'll take it from there. Yeah, no, it's a busy week. It's been one of those weeks where it's just like the pace is fairly hectic. It's both Gerry and Frank will tell you. Now, we have our County Council meeting on Monday, which means it's kind of the quiet before the storm. And it's a pretty packed agenda. There's motions pretty much on everything, as you'd appreciate. And remember the last time we were talking about the inheritance tax and talking about Stout's Law. The inheritance tax has absolutely taken off like a rocket. And I've had quite a few people ring me on that to say it's a great motion, well done. For those of you who don't know, we're looking for the harmonization of the inheritance tax bands so that, you know, somebody who doesn't have children gets the same rights and entitlements as somebody who does have a child. And if you want to leave your estate to somebody after you pass over, you know, if it's a direct offspring, they can up to 400,000, but if it's not, it's up to 40,000. So there's a huge anomaly and discrimination there. So that's coming up. But by and large, this week's been very busy. The Irish Lighthouses have an association, and they had a national conference in Dublin Castle this week where they brought people from all around the country who operate lighthouses. And as chair of the Hook Lighthouse Heritage, I was up there to talk to them about what their plans are. And it's very, very different political culture, because they had speakers in from different parts of Europe who have lighthouses and what they do. And they clearly, particularly in the Nordic countries, they cherish the lighthouses. It's an experience for tourism, as opposed to what we have here. It's kind of like a Sunday afternoon drive. So very interesting cultures between the different organizations. But I think when we're on lunch on Tuesday, this is Tuesday, Wednesday, we're on lunch, I nipped over to the Oireachtas to watch the budget come in. And I have to say that I've been in and out with the Dáil Éireann for the bones of 20 odd years. And it was the first time I could actually feel the atmosphere. It was just, I won't say electric, but it felt like it could explode at any minute. I think between the budget and between the whole presidential thing going, you know, AWOL, it was just the atmosphere up there was febrile, to say the least. But other than that, like, it's been a hectic enough week. And, you know, I think the budget is already outdated and outplaced. The CSO, with the announcement of inflation at 2.7%, has wiped out, and let's be clear about it, it's wiped out any increases anybody would have gotten, either by tax credits, tax bans, or social welfare. You know, as you know, I teach economics, and in class today, we were going through how the inflation has literally ripped out. That €10 that people have gotten now has gone on bread, milk, and butter. And so €6 of that is gone straight away. And if you multiply that over the year, so it's just showing that the way it's going, if it's a harsh winter, and please God it won't be, I would see a mini budget in January coming in to correct some of the things, because I actually think people will not be able to feed themselves. I actually don't think there's going to be a choice for families who are working. It's either heat or eat. You can't have the both. And I think we're going to be back here I would say back here in January, February. I hope not. Let me get this right. We're going to be back in the early new year to look at some sort of corrective measures to get people the money that they need, because, you know, coming into the budget, it was breaking point, and coming out of the budget now, people are under the limit.
And thank you very much for that, Councillor Sheenan. And we'll go to Councillor Gerry Coyle. Councillor Coyle, what is happening in your local area? What issues are coming up, and what are you bringing up in the local county council?
Not sure everything happens down here. I just want to remind Mike there, we have the most famous lighthouse in Europe, in Black Sod, just back the road from me. It was
You do. I love it.
That the D-Day Normandy landing forecast was sent, and the troops were put back for 2 days because of the weather forecast that went from there. And
That's
believe it or
great.
not, only last year the woman died that's in that forecast. It went to London and it went to the White House. It was in Downing Street, and they kept ringing her all night long just to make sure that what she was telling them was right. And she said the bars are falling, and had they gone out in that storm, we might all be talking German online here this evening, because they might not have won the war. So we lay a lot of claim to that famous thing. What I see in councils and indeed in the country, it's the slow pace of everything. You know, you're wanting to build a house, you're waiting for Irish Water to connect to you, you're waiting for ESB, you're waiting for different organisations. And in my council here, I live right out on the coast here of Mayo, and we have huge problems with planning, rural planning. And, you know, I always say, you know, if somebody is going to come here and they're going to live here 365 days a year, they're more entitled to that view than someone that comes for 1 week in the year. And I have been saying that for years, and I try to fight them rules and regulations. And then out here too, a lot of our land is designated as SACs, NHAs, SBAs. And what really cheeses me off, we had huge immigration, as we spoke about there, Frank, early on, to America, to all over the world. And when these people wish to come back, they're finding it difficulty to build a house on the land they were literally chased from as youngsters. You know, when there was no work here, they went away, they made money. It was always their dream to come back. And now there's rules and regulations. You can't build there because of it's an SAC. You can't build there because of the scenic views. Them views were there before they left too. But that view that I look out at here now, never put any bread on the table in this house. I seen my mother, God rest her, crying after 9 of us as we went to the 4 corners of the world. And sometimes it makes me very irate when these people who wish to come back, not to mention the story with the driving licenses coming from America, you know, they can't change them here for an Irish license when they come back, and they're waiting a year to get a driving test, which is absolutely scandalous. Another issue I bring up regularly is the long delays for the driving test. You have young people here. In my view, every single young person should be taught to drive before they leave secondary school, and give them extra points in their leaving cert for having achieved all these road safety things, not points on their license afterwards when they get caught by not being accompanied by a qualified driver. In rural areas, it's very difficult to get a qualified driver. And the ironic thing about it is what people, and I've raised this with the RSA, a young person, there's a woman over the road here, she didn't have a full license and she was afraid to drive her kids out to meet the school bus in the morning, but she could drive a carload of drunks home in the night if one of them had a full license. Doesn't make sense to me. But I raise these issues all the time. You know, I raise these issues and I try to bring them. And I raised Helen McEntee when she was Minister for Justice. In theory, the state is prosecuting people for the failure of the state. It's the failure of the state not to give somebody a driving test within a month of them applying for it. But if they're pulled in the meantime, after that month, some of them were waiting 8 and 9 months. Now I see a big thing on with the RSA, you know, and I heard one of them being interviewed recently saying, you know, we didn't expect such an increase in the population. Well, God, I don't know where he went to school, because, you know, everybody knows where the population was increasing and there was going to be demands on it. Them are the issues I raise all the time, and I try to make a case for rural Ireland because that's where we are. We're a rural-based county, most of it. You know, you have Castlebar and Ballina on the east side of the county. We have Balmullet out here near me, and you know, we survive the storms. We survive everything. We have the biggest windmill in Ireland is out the road, about 14 kilometres from here, and yet during storm, not the last one that was back in January, we were out electric while the windmills were generating electric and sending it out of the area. So that didn't seem to make sense to me. Anyway, them are the issues that I'd be raising most of the time and trying to make a point for the people I represent.
And now we're moving on to Donegal County Council, where I know and grew up very close to a lighthouse in Sheenan, out there up that Castle, Red Castle. Frank McBrearty, you're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup once again. What issues is coming up in Donegal, and you're bringing up at the County Council, or what's happening up there?
Well, I'm nearly 17 years in Donegal County Council. I got first elected in 2009. But the role of a county councillor is being diminished, and I blame government for that. We don't have the powers that, well, I feel, my own personal opinion is that when I first got elected in 2009, that first term that I was on the council, I felt that I had more power back then than I actually have today. Like, I was able to resolve medical card issues, Cllrs allowance, all that type of stuff in the first 5 years as a councillor. Over the last 10 years, I've had to use TDs and senators to get those issues resolved. But the two big bones of contention in Donegal at the minute is the Creeslough tragedy and the defective concrete scandal, which is known as the Mayo scandal incorrectly. And there should have been a public inquiry into both of them now established. Like the concrete scandal is the biggest scandal since the Morris Tribunal, which looked into the Garda corruption in Donegal. And we all know what came out of that. And it was a Mayo County Mayo TD that fought for me and my family. Jim Higgins, he was a Fine Gael spokesperson and justice at the time. But Charles Ward, our TD, the 100% Redress Party, he actually has a motion down next week for the defective concrete scandal for a public inquiry. So I would be hopeful that certain people within Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil would support that motion. And I think that that motion will highlight the failures of government to deal with the issue of 100% redress. And especially when Mayo is not the cause of the structural defects in Donegal. But I have to reiterate, go back to the Creeslough scandal. The state investigating itself doesn't work. And the Garda investigation is still ongoing. There's been a file sent to the EPP last week. I personally wouldn't have faith in that. It should have been a public inquiry established. And I had a motion passed a year ago now in November calling for a public inquiry into the Creeslough tragedy. And the Minister for Justice's response didn't come for 6 months. Now, I call the Ministers for Justice in Ireland the Ministers for Injustice because they don't understand the meaning of what justice actually is. And his response was that they couldn't hold a public inquiry into the Creeslough scandal at the minute because of the live Garda investigation. Well, that is the biggest incorrect information that was ever came out of the Department of Justice, and a direct letter back to me from my motion being passed. The precedent was set in Donegal. The Morris Tribunal was established on the 28th of March 2002, while criminal investigations were ongoing and civil litigation cases were ongoing in the High Court. And Gerry will remember this. All the McBrearty cases were all settled in County Mayo. And my father won a landmark judgment in 2007 in County Mayo in the new courthouse in Castlebar at the time. So the precedent was set for public inquiry. When a public inquiry is established, other investigations or a public inquiry, they can't interfere with each other. That's the law on it. So I'm very disappointed in Minister Callaghan, who came back with the answer to us that he wouldn't hold a public inquiry because of the ongoing Garda investigation. But the former Garda Commissioner, Drew Harris, he actually gave a statement about the Creeslough tragedy, stating that there would be no problem in having that public inquiry up and established. And that's what those families need, because the full truth will only come out in a full statutory judicial public inquiry. And the same with the defective concrete scandal, which Mayo and Donegal are the first two counties to highlight how bad it is. But in Donegal, we're unique because we have over 50,000 properties between commercial and private affected by defective concrete. And that is the correct name for it, defective concrete. And as I told you the last night, forensic evidence always supersedes circumstantial evidence, and the forensic evidence today shows, and in particular in my father's house, that total sulfates are the cause of the structural defects in Donegal properties, not mica. Mica is not a deleterious material as described in the government's defective concrete block standard IS 465, which is a flawed standard based on mica and reactive pyrite. Reactive pyrite for County Mayo and mica for County Donegal. And homes in Donegal are restricted to testing for mica only, and homes in County Mayo are restricted to testing for reactive pyrite. It's absolute farcical, the fact that an Irish standard is split down the middle, that they created, which is flawed, and you can't actually use the full standard to test a property in Donegal and the same in Mayo. It's absolutely ridiculous. But only in Ireland, as I say, an Irish solution to an Irish problem: cover everything up, stall everything, keep it stalled for as long as you possibly can, and hopefully the truth won't come out. That's the attitude of the state. But those are the two main issues at the minute nationally for Donegal, where there should be two public inquiries, and that includes County Mayo.
And Frank, as you said, Charles Ward, the TD for Donegal at the 100% redress party, he has a motion in front of, that will be going in front of the Dáil very, very, very soon. I suppose
Wednesday, I understand.
Wednesday, okay.
Now,
okay.
the last time a Donegal motion like that came up was the Morris Tribunal, and on the 21st of November 2001, Jim Higgins, Alan Shatter, Brendan Howland of the Labour Party, they put forward a motion in Cllr which was defeated by 2 votes. It was the closest vote at the time, and 4 months later, the government had to establish a public inquiry.
Right.
That was in 2001. So on the 28th of March, that was November, the 21st of November 2001, public inquiry motion was defeated by 2 votes, 82 to 80. And 4 months later, the public inquiry is established by the then Fianna Fáil Progressive Democrat government. But I have to say, Jim Higgins was a wee warrior. He was an absolute brilliant TD, and that my family wouldn't have been never been a political family, or we wouldn't have been Fine Gael, we wouldn't have been Fianna Fáil. But my grandfather would have been the Fianna Fáil through Civil War politics. But what do you call it? Jim Higgins was a brilliant wee man. He went on to become an MEP as well in Europe, and my family will always be indebted to him. Not one Donegal TD helped me or my family, not one senator, apart from Sean Maloney, who raised the issue of the harassment to our nightclub. But I can't speak highly enough of Jim Higgins. In my opinion, he should have been Taoiseach. So
he nearly was.
What was that, Gerry? I didn't hear you.
He nearly was. He nearly overtook Enda Kenny in that election before Enda was made the leader of the party. Enda nearly lost that election in Mayo, but the transfers went out from Frank Chambers and put Enda over ahead of Jim Higgins. Maybe Jim might have gone leadership. I don't know. I knew Jim Higgins very well. Very well. It was my son that drove him around the country when he was going for the senator at the time. My son Alan, that's in Chicago now, if you're ever talking to him about it, Frank, he drove him around the country, and they were pulled in a couple of times by Gardaí as well on the way. So, look at the pyrite issue here. I was the first one to get it going here in Eris, and it was very complicated. The best group I ever seen that done the investigation of that, I forget the name of the man now off the cuff. I think it was MacArthur, or I forget his name, the man that was chairman of that group. He pointed the finger directly at the quarries. There was no ifs or buts or anything. And you will notice it was pyrite and mica schemes they were investigating. But the amount of evidence that they got, they called it the defective block scheme. They didn't say it was pyrite, they didn't say it was mica, they called it the defective block scheme. Mm. And here in Mayo, the quarry that was supplying most of the thing, it had changed names a good few times. Then there was an insurance, it was Liberty, then it was Quinn, then it was somebody else. And in the end, nobody was going to go to court with them. because they feel they couldn't win. It was the directors and they were gone and there was new directors in. And look, it is what it is. I spoke to you, Frank, before because I made a proposal when it was the 90%. And I'll tell you the straight truth. I very much welcomed the 90% when it came out because 90% of something was better than 100% of nothing. So I very much welcomed it when it came out. And I welcomed it for the fact, but afterwards I made a proposal in the council that was carried that there be no VAT paid on the rebuild. Because why should people pay VAT? They were frauded out of the money in the first place. They were sold products that wasn't right. And you see, people were kind of comparing it with what happened in Meath. It was a completely different thing, what happened in Meath. Like that was stone under the flooring. Here and in Donegal, there was a product made that wasn't fit for purpose. There was a product manufactured. It's like if you pick up a cup and you fill it with hot water, you don't expect it to melt or scald you. But there was a product made that wasn't fit for purpose. And people were confusing the two things, that it was 100% treated. There was no price, I don't think, in the meat side of things. There was over 60,000. I know one woman that lived in her house apart from 1 week when they were doing it. She came down here to her mother, then she had a house done and she was down here. She stayed 2 weeks, but she said all there was left for them to do was the kitchen when she left. But here, and I'll tell you, whatever way it was in the 90%, it's getting more paperwork by the day. By the day now. It's getting more complicated. Tick this box, tick that box, do this. They're now on about taking out the outside leave off a house and trying to leave the house up. Utter nonsense. They've done an experiment with it down in Chleirigh on a small 2-bedroom social house. Fine. But when you have a 2-story house, how are you going to prop it up to take out the outside layer of blocks? Pure and utter nonsense. The whole thing needs a lot of work yet. And like the lunacy that I saw, part of it was where people had to apply for planning. Apply for planning. Why would they have to apply for planning? Because, and in some of the cases, since the planning was granted from them houses, things have changed, where there may be a continuous white line on the road. You can't see 100 metres each way. The house was already there. That was pure and utter nonsense. And if there was to be a planning thing on it, we should have done it as a Part 8 planning, like we do for the council houses, because it was state money that was buying them anyway. That was building them anyway, but they told us that you couldn't do that when the council didn't own the land they were going on. Even if the land was leased to the council, again, there was several ways of doing it. I worked hard on the Pyrite scheme, not to make millionaires out of engineers, but to look after the people that was badly done by it. That was and I had a lot of grief and I was very vexed about a lot of that.
But can I just come in there for a second? Is that okay?
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is what you
well, the actual scandal has moved on an awful lot since I spoke to Gerry the last time I spoke to Gerry about this. My father's property, his retirement home that he built for his family, especially the boys that are in America for coming back to visit. We have the forensic evidence on the foundations and the blocks. We have tested for everything, and we've tested under the standards for the blocks and the foundations. And that's what should have been used in the 90-10 scheme. But the government knew, and the NSAI knew, and Donegal County Council in particular knew. And I've written a position paper on this, 402 pages. I've spent 4 years investigating it. And the forensic evidence tells the story. The forensic evidence today proves that reactive iron sulfate minerals classified as total sulfates is the cause of the Donegal scandal, not mica. And secondly, the issue concerning the whole scandal, you've got to look at the bigger picture here. You've got to go back to 2001 when the industry became self-regulated. Prior to 2001, the industry was a regulated industry in Ireland. Same as it is in Northern Ireland and the UK, it's a fully regulated industry. That's when this scandal accelerated, when quarries, concrete companies, construction companies, they all started cheating. And I can say this, and this is based on legal issues, that any engineer, chartered engineer, that is recommending anything other than full demolition to these properties that have identified total sulfates or reactive pyrite in County Mayo should only be recommending one option, and that option is option one. is where the 90-10 scheme and the enhanced scheme is based on option 1 to option 5. Option 2 to option 5 is remediation option only. It could be 2 walls, it could be 1 wall, it could be a square in a wall, as where option 1 is full demolition. And the thing about it is the lack of building control and market surveillance from 2001. Donegal County Council has no record of building control or market surveillance whatsoever in the construction industry in Donegal, or the concrete industry or the quarry industry. And the bottom line is, you'll hear all these rumours about not enough cement, not enough this. Well, the cause of this structural defects in Donegal properties is the aggregate that was used with high levels of reactive iron sulfate minerals that are causing internal sulfur attack in the blocks and external sulfur attack in the foundations and internal sulfur attack in the foundations. My father's foundations were poured in 2008, and they have lost 75% of their Newton strength since 2008. And that is based on a scientific test result from Petrolab in the UK. A lot of the properties in County Mayo have also been tested by Petrolab. And Petrolab is the game changer. Those test results conducted, Petrolab have tested over 4,000 properties in Ireland, and every single one of them are all showing total sulfates as the cause of the structural defects. And that's why we need a public inquiry. We need to know why the NSAI, Donegal County Council, and a geologist from Trinity College went out and created and designed an Irish defective concrete block standard when they already had the standard for concrete. The standard for a concrete block in Ireland is EN for EU directive, IS for Irish standard, BS for British standard, 771-3. And there's a standard recommendation, SR16, which can be enhanced. That SR16 can be enhanced. But this is the problem. Engineers are not advising their clients correctly that were involved in the 90-10 scheme about the standards of what your concrete block should be and what your concrete foundation should be. And the fact is that the public inquiry is warranted, in particular warranted for one reason. One main reason is, why did they create a defective concrete block standard that was flawed and blamed Mayo and Donegal for the structural defects when they knew that Mayo could not do what they said it does in IS 465, which is the standard for concrete blocks, defective concrete blocks in Ireland. It's the biggest scandal in Donegal since the Garda corruption scandal. And the Creeslough scandal is moving that way as well. Yeah. The silence is deafening.
The defective blocks, is it only in a certain part of Ireland, or is it at the length and breadth of Ireland?
No,
is it only in the north?
I know. I've got to know one of the main corn contractors, and a lot of these houses that have been remediated in Dublin under the Leinster scheme, under the pyrite scheme, as Gerry mentioned earlier, that was all to do with the aggregates that was used in the floors. But some of those houses now are actually, the blocks are actually cracking in them. They never bothered testing the walls and the blocks in these houses that were remediated under the pyrite scheme. And there's rumours that Dublin Airport Terminal 2, the concrete used in it, is also defective. And talking to different contractors, it's rife across the country. But the main problem across the country is reactive pyrite, as where in Donegal, pyrrhotite and other sulfates is the cause of the Donegal structural defects. But pyrite is a huge issue right across the whole country because the industry was self-regulated during the Celtic Tiger. And that's where this problem starts. You have a building control and you have a market surveillance office in Dublin. When it was established, the directives were sent out to all the local authorities in Ireland. I think there's 36 local authorities in total. And they were to manage and police the industries, which they haven't done. They hide behind.
Yeah, actually, we haven't. We've had evidence of it in the north of Wexford, Frank. So, there is. Yeah, I think you're correct. There is spots of it nationwide. May not be as extensive. I won't say as extensive as Donegal, but it hasn't percolated yet. But we do in North Wexford, particularly housing estates built in the same time period. We would have had issues with either defective concrete or defective blocks. So we're probably in the same boat.
And we still don't have the building control and market surveillance that we should have. It's a huge issue in Ireland in general, policing. I'm not talking about Garda policing, I'm talking about policing industries.
Regulation. Self-regulation never works.
And that's something that we should be able to do at local government level, but we don't have the power to do that.
Just to correct one thing there, Frank. The first house that we have found in here was built in 19. It was from 1988 to 2005. 1998. Sorry, 1998 was the first one we identified. And you know, it was the most strangest thing. The house was falling down. He took a sample from it, and it passed. And we only found out after, like when then they took it in different places in the house where the worst cracks were, and it was riddled with it. But the local co-op, say, was selling bales of blocks, and they had them in standby. Someone might get a full load from the bad quarry, and then there might be good blocks in the thing. And if they came short of a bale, the local thing, and them are the good blocks that was tested first in your man's house. It was ironic. The poor devil since passed away, the fella, you know, but the house is rebuilt now in his absence, sadly. But
surely to God, lads, they wouldn't be making people who are affected by this go back for planning permission. Like that to me would be
if you downsize or you take out your foundations, you have to go for full planning permission again.
Yeah.
Could they not have gone for a planning exemption, or like could the executive have said,
if you build like for like under the 90-10 scheme and now into the enhanced scheme, you don't have to apply for planning permission. But who in their right mind, if they get full demolition, and that's if they get full demolition, wouldn't build their house to an A1 or an A2 rating today? You'd be off your head, not they? Our houses are built at a B1, B2, B3 rating, and what do you call it? You'd be off your head today if you didn't build your new house. If you get full demolition in the scheme to an A1 or an A2 standard, which is air to water, triple glazing, and solar panels, I mean, it would be absolute madness. But the government knew what they were doing when they established this grant scheme, and it's not a redress scheme; it's a grant scheme. They knew that the vast majority of people, depending on the size of your house, the vast majority of people wouldn't be able to afford to go full demolition. It's only the people that are now today that can actually afford to rebuild their house completely that are actually entering the scheme. And then people who are entering the scheme thinking that they can get their house rebuilt, they're becoming bogged down. And as what Gerry said earlier, paperwork and ticking the boxes, it's like a scorecard. I mean, this scorecard that these local authorities are using is absolutely crazy. You should never, ever ignore forensic evidence. And this is what the state has done. They've ignored the forensic evidence that shows that every chartered engineer must recommend full demolition because of what is in the blocks and the foundations. To date, foundations are still not included in the grant scheme, which is now the enhanced grant scheme. And that grant scheme should be opened up to the whole country who's got a problem with defective concrete blocks or defective concrete foundations. But the thing about it is, any chartered engineer cannot recommend any other option, only full demolition, if you have the presence of pyrrhotite, rare pyrite, minor pyrite, chalcopyrite, marcasite, thomsite, etruscangite, and reactive pyrite. Those are deadly. Pyrrhotite, the permitted level is 0.1%. Reactive pyrite is 0.9%. And the other sulfites that I mentioned there are 0.99%. But when you have category 2 and 3 present with pyrrhotite, it is reclassified in a forensic test result as total sulfites, and those levels drop also to 0.1%. And the levels that are shown up in the 4,500 Petrolab test results are actually between 2 and 3% visually. That's what they can see visually. I'll give you an example. My father's block content of reactive iron sulfate minerals classed as total sulfates is 0.68%. That's 680% above the recommended level.
Gerry,
so that's absolutely crazy.
Gerry, I saw you looking to come in there a wee while ago.
Yeah, you see, it's like everything. We weren't used to dealing with something like this. This pyrite has been in Canada I think it was 1952.
Wow.
Was first identified in Canada and someplace in mid-America. And you see, nobody was prepared for it. But as Frank said there, like, I don't know what the conditions were, who was supposed to inspect, who was supposed to keep things. But when you get concrete one time, there was a thing called a slump test. They'd throw it out before it went into the foundations. The engineers and that know how long it would take to go down and all that. But like, it's a major problem. People, and the problem then was you if you had an estate and you had a semi-detached house and you had someone saying they had pyrite and the neighbours next door wouldn't agree or mightn't have the money to proceed to do the thing. How do you knock one house away that's defective from beside another house? And then if one or two in the estate takes it, and then say there's a house being knocked next to a woman that might be on night shifts working the next day, and there's a machine in there belting away, she might have to sleep in the daytime. You know, they're knocking this house. There's kids coming off school buses. Like, it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem, especially in estates out the country. It doesn't matter because you're gone away from the house. But then people were trying to rent places and nobody had places to rent and they hadn't places to get while their own houses were being dismantled and done. And it's a huge problem, and it will continue to be a huge problem for some time into the future.
And is the media covering this? Is the mainstream media covering this?
They are.
But they're not covering it the way, like, I mean, I'm well known in Ireland as being forensic when I investigate because of my experience against the state. I mean, people, the younger generation wouldn't remember, but our generation, I have been involved in one of the biggest scandals ever to hit the Irish state, and in that scandal, I became an expert proofreader. And when you proofread documents, which I have a lot of experience in doing when I was at the Morris Tribunal and in the High Court, you educate yourself, and this is the problem. People haven't educated themselves in this scandal. I spent 4 years, this last 4 years, I completed a position paper that tells you the full facts and truths about the defective concrete scandal. And that's what it should be called. But it's very simple. When you buy a concrete product, you're supposed to be protected by the state. And that concrete product, such as a concrete block, should be tested. There should be samples. Like, for example, our engineer is a chartered engineer in Northern Ireland and in the Free State. But in Northern Ireland, when he's looking after a job, he'll test a portion of samples of blocks from the lorries that come in to the site, and he'll test those blocks under the standards that were manufactured under, which is EN 771-3. That is the standard for a concrete block in Ireland, and the Newton strength standard in that block is 7.5 Newton, and in a concrete foundation is EN 206, and that EN 206 Newton strength standard is 35 Newton or above. So if they don't meet those standards, if those standards are not met after the testing, then those standards cannot be put onto the open market for sale. This is where the breakdown of this whole issue is, that no market surveillance and no building control allowed products to go onto the market with a CE stamp on it and be allowed to be sold in a hardware shop, be sold by a quarry. Once they stamped it, nobody investigating, nobody policing to see if the laboratory where the concrete manufacturing plant was, where they abiding by the rules and regulations under the standards. And what people don't understand, when an EU directive comes out, within months of that EU directive, the National Standards Authority of Ireland adopt that EU directive. So every time there's a concrete enhancement in a concrete product, when the EU directive sends that out, the National Standards Authority of Ireland adopt that standard within 2 to 3 months of that EU directive coming into being. So the big question mark is, why did the NSAI back in 2018 design and create a defective concrete block standard when they knew all they had to do was test the defective concrete blocks in County Mayo and County Donegal under the EU directive, which is an adopted Irish standard and an adopted British standard? So that's the big question mark that a public inquiry will have to answer. And the thing about it is, any scandal that's going to cost billions and billions of euros, there should have been a public inquiry up and running by now.
You talked about earlier about
Yeah.
local county councillors not having the powers that are necessary. What solutions would you all bring or put forward to the government or the civil servants of how to bring powers back to local government to sort out local issues? Michael, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm fascinated with what Frank is saying there. Like, just the whole process of it, and it's typical Ireland, isn't it? Like, it's not the crime, it's the cover-up kind of philosophy about it. It's the issue. It's not really what the central part is. It's the reaction by official Ireland and how they react to it. And it's whether, in this situation, whether it's defective concrete or defective building or whatever other scandal that we've had in society, it's the reaction to it. And I think one of the areas what we could have as a county council is have the absolute powers to bring people before us, and to bring people to account and have the powers to go after these people. At the moment, we don't. And the executive have the powers, but, the executives will only do what the executive will do of local government. And ultimately, and the lads will tell you this, ultimately, this is at the behest of the department. So whatever way it works, the central government is going to be pulling the strings. So I would be saying if we had more powers of compulsion, more powers of investigation, more powers to force officials to do things and to get the answers, I think you might have a different thing. But it just goes to show, but if you step back and look at it, in this country, self-regulation does not work. And no matter what area of the economy, society, culture, country, you can't have a situation where an industry is regulating itself, because there's always going to be that kind of risk that something is going to go wrong. And time again, we never learn when we see it does go wrong.
And Gerry?
It's how would I put it? Like, as Frank was saying, when I went in first, I could ring the council about a water problem. Now you'll dial this number in Irish water, Ishke Éireann, yeah. Press 1 for something, press 2 for something else. It's like Telecom Éireann. When the phone lines were down here at an old man for 4 months after the start. Press 1 for service, press 2 for something else. We know there's an outage in your area. You're talking to a machine most of the time instead of a person. Did you ever think you'd see the day for the computer to be asking you to prove you weren't a robot? That's what it's like. Press, how many traffic lights do you see? You need to be able to talk to people face to face. Forget about Facebook. There's no beating face to face. And as Frank said, when you ask the question, you want the answer. You don't want them to be going out looking for this. You see, our power is eroded away, like from being able to put down, as Mick said, the questions right there in front of them. Why did somebody put in? Now, in the first instance, there was planning for these houses, which was lunacy. You'd have to get planning to rebuild a house that was a wreck of a house. Why was that? Sure, that was crazy stuff. But I was on Zoom calls before Zoom calls really took off to the high standard there now with department officials. And I played a big part in the 90%. I'll tell you the straight truth, a big part of it for Mayo. Because I was friendly with Enda Kinney and Michael Ring and all them people. And I played a big part of it. And whatever people may think Joe McHugh, he played a big part in Donegal because he was on them Zoom calls too. And I was onto them all and onto this one. But our power, how would you put it? Like, you seem to be talking in a vacuum, and the system works away all the time, like what I was saying to you now about the license. My son Alan, since they were 17, I named them on the insurances of all the cars. The minute they were 17, and they're still named, I kept their names on when they come back. They'd have maybe a discount because they were coming back to the country. Now Alan has an American license, the cargo license. So for this year, the new rules that came out for the driver license, he'll be classified as a learner driver on the car he's been insured on since he was 17. And he's now 40 or whatever he is. But if he hires a car in Dublin with the American license, no problem. He can drive all over Europe and nobody will bid an eyelid. But if he drives his father's car on his named insurance, he's considered as not a qualified driver. I never heard, like, if you were trying to make this stuff up, you wouldn't be able. Somebody sitting in some room sometimes, you would not literally be able to make all up this stuff that's going on. You know, and yet we'll give anyone that's coming from Europe and they're driving on the left, we'll swap their license over, no problem. Someone come from Australia, we'll swap their license because they're in the Commonwealth. But like, there's so much stuff that I'd love to say some days, that will you please sit down here until we go through this thing with the plannings, with the different things. But there seems to be a kind of a barriers against council. I'd love to see the people having to go in to answer to the committees in the Dáil. I love it because the TDs and senators and everybody are asking them the questions that they have to answer live there on television. Not trying to cover it up and saying, well, no, we've done this and we've done that and we've done something else. I don't know. I'll be truthful. In the last few years, I've got very frustrated with it all. Very frustrated. The slow pace of stuff. You know what I mean? That's what kills me.
And Frank, like, who do you county councillors go to? What department? Who do they contact? How can we bring back powers to local government?
Well, first of all, you need to reform local government. That's the first thing you need to do. And in my opinion, there should be a commission set up by the government to look at how to reform local government. And the first thing that I would reform is take the powers away from the chief executives, because they have executive powers over us as county councillors. We're the elected people. We're elected by the people to go in there and hold them accountable. But we can't actually hold them accountable because they have executive powers. Like, I can't get into too much detail, but a lot of the councillors in Ireland would know that I'm in a really big battle against Donegal County Council in the criminal courts and in the civil courts. And I'm going to do the same as what I did when I cleared my name when I was fighting Garda corruption. But it's going to take time. It's probably 5-6 years, maybe more down the road before the things that I have investigated and exposed in Donegal, it actually comes to a fore and be fully exposed in a legal court. And I mean, one of the things that I would describe in local government is power sharing agreements. When these power sharing agreements are put together, the groups that go into these power sharing agreements in local government, they're more interested in blowing kisses at the chief executives and their directors in case that they don't get the things like the wee pothole fixed or the road or an LIS scheme, etc. And the thing about it is, I have seen this, and I'm a former mayor of the county. I was first citizen in 2012, 2013, and I've seen the workings of the council behind the scenes, and I've seen the workings of the council as a county councillor, and you're kind of independent in the year you're in the chair of the council. And what do you call it? There needs to be huge reform, huge accountability within that reform, and the powers that the chief executives have now needs to be seriously looked at, because we really don't have any powers. But we've got the right to strike a rate, the commercial rates and the local property tax. But the thing about it is, we're encouraged to take the side of the chief executive and these directors, especially the finance director, to go their way instead of us being able to look at it in a committee within the council and say, right, they're not telling us the full facts here. They're only telling us what they want, what they think we want to hear. And you'll never ever see a budget not being passed in Donegal County Council or any other local authority. And I mean, when I was mayor of the county, we had the longest ever budget meeting in the history of Donegal County Council. It basically lasted for a full week over a 4 or 5 week period. I mean, and the council almost collapsed, but they eventually passed it.
Did Noel Dempsey come up to meet with you guys? Was that the
No, but it was threatened. It was threatened.
Right.
The budget
was going to collapse it.
See, you have a deadline, and our deadline was midnight. So once the meeting opened, we had to keep running that meeting till we got the budget passed. There had been 3 adjournments of the meeting over a couple of week period. But what do you call it? And that really showed me a really good insight into behind the scenes and the rhetoric that goes on behind the scenes between party whips, the chief executive, and other councillors. I mean, a good example, and Gerry would know this, as being a rural county councillor like myself, LIS schemes. Prior to me being elected in 2009, millions used to come into the counties for LIS schemes. Those millions are gone. The local farmer, the 4 houses on a lane, we're not getting enough money on a yearly basis to deal with the issues we've got with those local improvement schemes. And I mean, I would say Gerry probably feels the same. But prior to my election, the county councils got millions in each area every year. That has been diluted by millions. Like, I think in Donegal, in total, I think it's less than $1 million we get for LIS schemes a year. I mean, it doesn't even cover, but the whole issue of the power the chief executives has, they're far too much power, and they're not accountable to anybody. There's not even an ombudsman, proper ombudsman, that would actually go and investigate a complaint from a councillor about a chief executive. They control everything. That whatever they say goes. And that is one of the big issues that I have with local government, is the power that directors and the chief executives have. 99% of the Donegal County Council staff that I work with, I have no problem with. But the directors and the chief executive of Donegal County Council, I have a huge issue with them. And my biggest issue is accountability.
And Michael and Gerry, you were both first elected in 1999. I suppose you've seen a lot in those 26 years.
Yeah.
Do you feel you have less powers now than what you had in 1999?
Well, I'll be truthful. The normal councillor thing, you can get very little done unless your party is in government. That's telling you straight up. And I got a lot of stuff done because I was very friendly with Michael Ring, as I said, and Indicany, and I forced their hand because for my support, I thought I deserved something back. But the usual stuff we get done, Frank, like a few bob for LIS, a few bob for this, the prices have gone up and the money has come down. The prices that you're getting quoted exorbitant prices now for a bit of tar and chips and a few things. And then the council official, the council for administering the scheme takes so much off the top when the money comes in anyway. The only money is the notice of motion money here that seems to go, the whole amount goes to the thing. But for the LIS jobs, there's a huge problem.
I would have thought, Paul, I was elected first to an urban council.
Okay.
And the urban council was completely statutory separate from the county council. We had our own budget, we had our own staff, we had the town clerk, and they were all abolished in 2014, which is the biggest mistake in the history of the Irish state, because it removed the lowest level of sub-local government, and it saved nothing because you now had more county councillors at a higher rate. As a matter of fact, when they were abolished in 2014, an urban councillor was getting €4,000 per annum total. And so there were 9 on the urban. So an urban council for the elected members was about 35 grand, 36 grand. And I'd say now, all things being equal, one county councillor would be that now. And the difficulty is, and this is why I think when they abolished it, they got rid of the town councils, but now they have bigger county councils. So the ability to get things done in a larger group is a lot harder than it was in the urbans. And I have to say, the people who brought it in, principally Labour and Fine Gael, but principally Labour, they were the absolute people destroyed by it, because most of the Labour councillors that come up through the county council actually came through the town councils. So when that was gone, because it was a lot easier to get 200 votes than it is 2,000. And, it just wiped out that whole thing. And what it did do, it just removed, and there is a vacuum there between the electorate and the elected. And essentially, because county councils are bigger, to go back to what Frank was saying, it's a lot easier for divide and conquer by the executive of the elected members, because, in County Wexford we have 34. Prior to 2014, we had 21. So there was no saving whatsoever, and that sort of stuff. But I would find, and the one thing I would just kind of slightly disagree with Gerry on that, because whether your party's in government or not, if you work the system hard enough, you'll get there. You know what I mean? You'll get your results and that sort of stuff. But by God, it is a struggle. And we're kind of caught up now. Local, because the way the media has gone and social media has gone, the local council are now caught up in this whole melee of like anti-politics, and politicians are all bad and everybody's doing everything and nobody's doing anything. And so we're kind of like the front line. We're getting in the neck for decisions that A, we have no control over, B, we have no accountability over, and C, they're taken in Dublin anyway.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I call it unsocial media. Sorry, the unsocial.
Yeah, it is very on social media. It's brutal. It is brutal.
I call it the unsocial media. I was in favour of the town councils going, because in fairness, we did get extra money. We're playing on the senior team. It's the full county here now. Before, there was no money around Belmullet. There was no way of sourcing funds. There was no way of getting funds. We didn't have the big Aldis. We didn't have the big supermarkets. We didn't have the big multinational companies working in Belmullet. So there is more money coming from the Westports, the Ballinars and the Kesselbars, since that there's a fairer thing of a chunk of money coming. Because before, we have GMA funding now here from car parking and things that we didn't have before. We have a lot of different things going that we didn't have when the town councils were there, because the money was swallowed up within the 50-kilometre zone of where it was collected.
Well,
But the towns never had the LIS. The county council had a different rating mechanism and a different mechanism for funding than the town councils, and proportionately, even though I understand 100% see where you come from, Gerry, but from the town's point of view, it was actually diffusing. So, you know, it's 6 of one, half of a dozen the other. But we are where we are in all of this, and we'll see. But by 2029, apparently the government has committed to having the re-establishment of town councils back on the agenda for 2029. So let's see how that goes.
Frankie, you were looking to come in there.
Oh no! See, what do you call it? The two boys will know this. The money that councillors are paid, it's blown out of proportion by certain aspects of the media and by social media. I mean, like Donegal County Council's annual budget is anything between 300 and 500 million with a capital budget and all that. Like, and I think it's about 2 million for the wages of all the councillors. And in fairness, like I don't get on with all the councillors, but they all do their bit for their own home area. And what do you call it? You couldn't be paid enough. Like, I mean, there's nights that I'd be sitting at the computer 12 and 1 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it's unsociable hours. People rarely contact you during working hours. They usually contact you when they get home from work and etc. But what do you call it? If you look at the executive of local authorities and what they're getting paid and their expenses on top of it, it's huge money compared to what we get as county councillors. Like, we're basically we're just above the average wage. I think it's around 30,000 a year for a county councillor. It's not a lot of money in today's money. Like in 1989, I was working in London steel fixing, and I was earning 50,000 a year in 1989. So I mean, what do you call it? Like, I'm a full-time public representative in Donegal, and I've had to add money to my salary to keep me and my family going over the last 17 years. And I mean, I don't do anything else now. I'm a full-time county councillor. And what do you call it? Because I had to give up my father's pub business when it was operating, because I couldn't do the two jobs because there was that many people coming to me. But as an experienced councillor now, I have all that well under control. I've set out my day. I'll get up early in the morning and I'll deal with emails as they come in, a couple of hours in the office in the morning and a couple of hours in the office in the evening time. And sometimes you don't even have to do a lot in the evening time, because I do everything in the morning for the first couple of hours, and that's me. And if you keep on top of it every day, then it's not as hard to work as what you would think it is. So what do you call it? A lot of people don't actually understand the pressures that are on families. When you have a public representative in the house, your family gets it in the ear as well. And I mean, politicians in general, people vote for them, but when they're elected, they're not popular. It doesn't matter what party you're in. It doesn't matter if you're an independent. Somebody will not like you, There's always, and that's one of the things that I don't like about politics, because prior to me getting into politics, I had no experience of politics. And I would be a kind of a person that could talk to anybody and I could get on with anybody. But after I got involved in politics, I would say I have more enemies today than I ever had prior to 2009. But I have a lot of friends too, if you understand what I'm saying to you.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not the job. If you want to be liked, don't go into politics.
Hey, Frank.
Roisin, I often tell when you meet the newly elected, when you go to the AMAI and LAMA and the ALG, and you meet the newies, and they're full of enthusiasm, and they're going to do this, they're going to be that, they're going to be so popular. And you talk to them and say, listen, if you want to be worshipped, go to India and start mooing, because there is no way. As soon as you start making decisions, and Frank is right, as soon as you start making decisions and have opinions, that's when things go wrong, and you have to stand up for your opinions and stand up for yourself. But and I take everything Frank is saying, and I don't disagree with any of it, except one of the beauties of politics and the people who are elected, and irrespective of party or independent, you have to have a certain personality. You have to be able to. You just have to be able to take it. You have to be able to walk around the supermarket and somebody says, "Hey, look, I know you're off duty. Well, I'm in the supermarket, but can I ask you about this, this, and this?" And you're going, "Of course you can. That's your job. You're there to help, because you can't run around and knock at the door when you're canvassing, said, sorry, I'm only canvassing from 9 to 5 because that's the only when I'm working." So, you got to get on with it. But what I think has happened, and maybe the lads, and certainly Frank would be able to contest to this one, it's I never thought I would ever see a day in this country when an elected member has to call in a Gardaí to have a security sweep on their house, and that there's a grant of €10,000 there to secure your home. Do you know what I mean? And that says a lot about where we're going in society as a nation, where a local councillor, which is by virtue of the fact it is a part-time job, has to look at putting cameras and security fencing and all that sort of stuff. And as a society, I think that's something we kind of need to take a step back on. Because here's the question, and this is the question that I always ask the lads. Here's the question. If you were to meet yourself at 25 years of age, would you tell yourself to go into politics now?
Well, I have a simple answer for that. I would never advise any of my family to go into politics. Full stop.
I think they see it in action. So families rarely go into it, because they see what it's like.
My son is 36, and he's still playing football at a pretty good standard. He would actually make a very good politician, because he'd be a lot more diplomatic than I would be. Because I would be.
That couldn't be a true statement, now, Frank, could it? No. Just one thing you have to remember, Frank. You're liked by some, disliked by many, criticised by all. Don't be expecting anything different. And I remember a reporter asking me the first night I was elected. He said, "Is there any difference between the politics and the boxing?" Oh, I said, "There is. In the boxing, you know the opponent."
And in the boxing, you can knock somebody out. You can't do that in public.
Yeah, I knew that one was coming. It's I don't think you can do that. Frank, I'm just checking the rules. I don't think you can do that across the table.
Sometimes you would love to.
Sometimes you'd like to go over. You would. But look, that's the fun of it.
Over time, but before we go, I want to thank. Before Paul has a little plug to. He has a book of Gerry Coyle's that we want to plug. Paul, will you hold it up and plug? And Gerry, will you give your book a plug?
This is a great book about your late dad, Gerry.
The camera a bit more, Paul. Yeah.
Can people see that there, though?
Yeah. Next, Gerry, do you want to plug your book?
I don't really, because most people have seen it. But I don't think you're going to be talking, or they're going to be talking to anybody again whose father carried Michael Collins's coffin. And
is your son Henry called after him?
Yeah. And he's one of a very rare few. He was, during the Troubles, he was jailed in Ireland, he was jailed in England, and he was jailed in Scotland. And his first wedding was on the New York Times. He spent time in Peterhead prison. He was one of a group of people who burned 18 warehouses in Liverpool when the Black and Tans killed the people in Grove Park. And I suppose that's the gist of the story. But Frank, if you think there was an injustice done on you, read that book.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
Where do you get it, Gerry?
Yeah.
Where do you get it?
It's on mayobooks.ie. And if you contact me directly, I'll get one out to you.
Good man. Yeah. Good man. I'll take one.
Yeah, it's a sad tale, but it's a true story.
And we're still suffering from civil war politics in Ireland, sadly.
No, well, we're not, because I got over that whole thing, and I no more than yourself, Frank. I couldn't see too many directing you what to do, what to myself. I couldn't see many putting the whip on you, and I think that's the way I have operated too, for all the years I'm in it. I'm there since 1999. If anyone shouldn't go into politics, it should have been me. When you read that book, you'll understand why.
Good. Send it on. Yeah, absolutely love to read it, Gerry.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen.
Irish history is amazing, isn't it?
Amazing. But
it's not, you know what the amazing thing is? It's not the front line, it's the second line. The hidden histories of it.
Just before I finish, when you think what these people achieved, you had untrained and inexperienced soldiers brought the might of the British Empire to the negotiating table. The negotiations on our behalf was carried out by untrained and inexperienced negotiators, because we had never negotiated with anyone before about anything, because we didn't have our independence. And if you look back today, you have a better understanding what they achieved, because we have the might of America behind us now, we have the might of Europe behind us, and they can't solve the Northern Protocol, which is about paperwork, nothing at all to do with territory. So it gives you a better understanding what these people achieved. Thank you.
Well, and you know, this has been a real riveting. I've been sitting at the edge of the chair listening to everything that you've all said. And we want to thank, Paul and I want to thank you all, the three of you coming on. Councillor Michael Sheehan from New Ross in County Wexford, Councillor Gerry Coyle from County Mayo, and the one and only Frank McBrearty from Raffo up there in Donegal, just down the road from my home city, the town I love so well, and that's Derry. So, so thank you so much indeed for taking the time to join Paul and me on the Irish Political Roundup for our new concept, which Councillor Michael Sheehan helped name. The Irish Political Roundup, County Councillors, Caucus Roundtable.
Good luck to you all.
Take care, guys. Send us on that book. Send on the book.
Yeah,
good man.